Okay, well, thank you very much. Now we're going to some comedy, and although the death penalty is not strictly speaking an inherently funny subject, Keith Farnan has used his experience as a law student working with crusading lawyers in America to launch an attack on its criminal justice system, take a comedic swipe at capital punishment. You can see him performing his one-man show, Cruel and Unusual, Irish Comedian versus American Death Penalty at the Battersea Arts Centre in South London this coming Wednesday and Thursday. But here he is now, Keith Farnan.
Great. This show came about really from my experiences, as you said, when I was working to become a lawyer earlier in sort of my career. So I suppose I use the word lawyer now. I don't use solicitor. I know we have solicitors over here, but when I went to America, and I go there a lot, I discovered that, solicitors means something else entirely in America. For those of you who don't know, it means client of a prostitute. And I'd like to personally thank JFK Customs for explaining that to me after they asked me what did I do in Ireland, and I said I was training to be a solicitor. And they asked me how long that took, and I said 7 years. And they said, oh, you Catholics, and let me into the country, which was quite nice. Now, the show's called Cruel and Unusual because cruel and unusual punishment is prohibited under the US Constitution, 8th Amendment. So cruel and unusual punishment is illegal, but they still execute people, which means you can hang people, you can poison them, you can electrocute them, but under no circumstances should you have anyone killed by dropping a giant jelly bean on their head by a dwarf in a penguin suit, because that would be cruel and very unusual. It's an emotive topic. People get very, into it, very upset. I was doing a preview of the show in New York, an incredibly liberal city, when the biggest man I've ever seen stood up in the middle of the show. He had a baseball cap, beard, huge guy, and he stopped me and he just said, "Hey, buddy, what gives you the right to talk about the death penalty in my country?" And I thought to myself, you know what, that's a fair and a reasonable question. I didn't tell him that, I simply said, "Your mama." Which wasn't the most, obviously the most sophisticated of put-downs, but he wasn't a very sophisticated man. And as he was being led away, he shouted out at me, he said, "Hey, buddy, you ever heard of an eye for an eye? That's what God thinks." And I was like, of course, that's what God thinks. God has a big pile of eyes. He just swaps with you. That's what he does. God has a big pile of eyes. He's cheating. And I went away and I looked it up. It's in the Bible. They're absolutely right. It's there. It's in the book of Exodus. But it's not just eye for eye. It's eye for eye, tooth for tooth, wound for wound, burn for burn, bruise for bruise, punch for punch, dead leg for dead leg, sarcastic comment for sarcastic comment. Okay, some of you laughed, the rest of you didn't. You think that's in the Bible, you're a bunch of heathens. That's fantastic. I wonder how far I could have gone. Chinese burn for Chinese burn. That might have worked. So these are the arguments that they use. One of the arguments for the death penalty is that God's on the side. He's not really. God was drunk when he wrote the Bible. We all know that. He's like, "You'll do this for my name is the Lord." The only time you do that is when you're drunk. "You will do this for my name is the Keith." That's when you do it. And I suppose it's hard to talk about the death penalty, but people ask you all the time, how do you make it funny? And you just have to really pay attention to the details. And lethal injection, which is all they've left with now in the States for execution, was developed in 1939 in Germany. Now, if you're looking for a time or place in world history when you can figure out a way to execute a lot of people, 1939 in Germany is a pretty good place to look. I don't mind if they use lethal injection. I just want them to put a little swastika at the end. Ronald Reagan has said it's like putting a horse to sleep. Commentators in America have said it's reliable, it's quiet, it's comfortable. That's not an execution, that's an Audi. You could even do the ads, Vorsprung durch Technik, that'd be fine. Now, I know if anyone's listening from Audi, I don't want you to take it personally. I tried it with the other brands of car, you can't do it. Volvo for life does not work in there. So that's it.
Thank you.